Time for one more, and I must admit, this was not on my radar, but someone wrote out this type of question in several different ways, so it's important to someone. We'll start off with Mr. Koller. What are you doing to support the post office?
Oh, well, we have to support our post. It's the United States Postal Service. It's in our Constitution, no less. The fact, there was a law put into effect, and why I still haven't figured out. But they had to advance 75 years into the future retirement. No other entity on earth has been asked to do that. We don't allow them to advertise. We don't. It's also the largest employer of veterans. So why are we trying to trash it? This is on and on again. What happens is, it's pretty plain and simple. If you look at everything, our education system to our postal service, to our healthcare system, if our Congress underfunds it and it doesn't work, they can sell it off. That's all there is to it. Our schools are not working because they're underfunded. No, the schools aren't working. Let's make them charter. It's the same thing with the post office. Privatize it, privatize it, privatize it. These are services. Let's talk about the last mile. I know you're familiar with the last mile, so let's talk about that too. The Postal Service last mile. I only know you know about it because when I talk to the letter carriers, they've said they've talked to you about it. So let's talk about the last mile.
Well, we have to talk about it in like 10 seconds because we're
All right, we don't need to talk about that. We'll be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Koller. Mr. Nugent, what are you doing to help the post office?
Listen, years ago, there was a law passed that forced the post office to pre-fund their retirement because they were underfunded. They were clearly underfunded. So at the end of the day, it's, what's happened is the post office can advertise. If you watch TV, you can see they advertise. The post office has gotten themselves in a trick bag because they have lost business as it relates to your package delivery, as it relates to FedEx and UPS. They've lost out. The post office, to this day, they still don't do things that most businesses do as it relates to, they're upset because people aren't mailing letters to pay their bills because most people now do it on the internet. They saved the money in regards to the stamp. The post office hasn't figured that out in regards to a business plan. The post office, I don't sit on the committee that hears the postal issues, but the post office has not come up with a business plan that makes them money. They could, but they haven't. And I think that's part of what's been endemic as it relates to the federal government. There are options out there if you look at the private industry, and I'm not saying privatize. Hey, wait, time a second. I've never said anything about privatizing the post office. But if you look at private industry as it relates to how they are efficient in what they do, there are some lessons to be learned on efficiency. And the government has absolutely forgot about efficiencies or about accountability that Mr. Koller talked about. It is about accountability. Mm-hmm. And the federal government has forgotten about accountability on every issue.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent.
Can I just say one thing? Just and you can answer back as well, Rich. The fact is that it is very hard for the post office to do that budget when you have a $50 billion mandatory item line. How can you start with that much of a deficit? If you're interested in saving the post office, let's get rid of that. Let the post office thrive. It can. It's an institution.
I would just tell you that there is no free ride. There is no free ride as it relates to the postal employees or any employee as it relates to their pension. It's the end of the day. It's about absolutely making sure that the post office is funded correctly, that the post office can continue to do its service. Now, what that looks like in the future, I don't know. But end of the day, the post office is in control of their destiny if they want to take control of it.
They're not.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent.